So take me back to that time. How was it for you?
I've still got vivid memories of the actual night of the cyclone and being at home and obviously listening to it as it raged outside. And we live in a 3-storey house, so our whole house was literally swaying. And I got the phone call at about 3:30 a.m. to say, we need you to come in. Our advice is that, yourself and Sandra jointly declare a state of emergency. So I would manage to get into the office where the EOC Emergency Operations Centre was set up here in this Cape View building pretty much within about 20 minutes. Fortunately, I live quite close, so got in here and we got on the phone to Sandra, and her and I just had the Civil Defence team talk us through what they were starting to see happening, and we pretty quickly agreed with their advice and declared our joint state of emergency. And then it wasn't long after that the Hawke's Bay Regional Council obviously also declared a region-wide state of emergency. So we were all very much, together on this right from the very, very early stages of the cyclone. For us here in Ahuriri and Napier, I guess what transpired after that, a population of 70,000, and you don't expect to suddenly become cut off completely from the rest of the country and in fact the world. So obviously we lost power at about 7:45 that morning. We moved our emergency ops centre down to another building where the generators were based and set up there, and started calling in staff or trying to track down staff, because obviously no power, no internet, and then we'd lost telecommunications as well. So we were literally having to physically get in cars and drive around to find staff to come and man our emergency operations centre. And even some of the roads you couldn't get through. So obviously anyone living in Hastings, we couldn't call on them to come and help. So it would be fair to say, for a little while there, we were just having to get as many people as we could in, and then gradually as the roads opened over the ensuing days and we were able to get hold of people, more and more of our team came in to help out with that initial response. And I guess the thing that I still reflect on to this day, and what was the most challenging for me, was that loss of telecommunications and the loss of the ability to communicate with our community and let them know what was happening. It was just so frustrating to know that people were literally in the dark with no power, had no ability to communicate with their loved ones, no ability to let their loved ones know, either here in Napier or nationwide or in the world, that they were okay. And I know there were thousands and thousands of inquiries through to the police in those early days, people overseas and from throughout the country who couldn't get hold of their loved ones, trying to confirm that they were okay. So again, that was one of the messages that I was trying to get out to people, is that if you can't get hold of your loved ones, in all likelihood they are fine. Please just contact the police and they will let you know. And then obviously we had the likes of Unison and Transpower desperately working to get our power reconnected, and all the relevant telecommunications companies doing what they could do. But we did literally have 5 days before any of the power came back on, and then it was only 15% of the city, and it took another good week before slowly the city came back online with power. Those first few days with no road access in or out, again, I think back and remember the lines of cars lining up to get fuel, and the petrol stations having to ration the fuel because of course we couldn't get any more into the city, the supermarkets running out of food on the shelves, and then just those really simple things you don't think about, that you couldn't pay by EFTPOS because there's no power. So and people typically don't have cash, and the ATMs weren't working. So it's quite mind-blowing. It's all these things we just take for granted as part of our day-to-day lives, and we lost all of that for a number of days. So, to me now, one of the key focuses is ensuring that that never happens to our community again. In this day and age, in a city of this size, we should not be put into that position.
And particularly, as you say, Napier was cut off, both by roads, but also with healthcare. we have the hospital in Hastings. How was that as a city as well?
And that was actually really terrifying to think that we couldn't access our health services. And, you know, I know for the staff as well, because again, you know, we do have so many people that live between the two cities. So there was a lot of staff living here in Napier that were unable to get across to the hospital. And yeah, but certainly for our wider community, if they needed access to those sort of secondary health services, we couldn't get them. Obviously there's things like helicopters, and if there was a real emergency, you would find a way. But it's still, it's quite a scary thought to think that you're cut off from your primary hospital. And I do want to give a shout out to all of those staff that were stuck here in Napier, and I know that they all went to the Wellesley Road Health Clinic and they set up some services there and did what they could from there, which was fantastic. Yeah.
You really saw a community effort, not only people employed to do these kind of things, but also volunteers coming up to help others.
I think that's one of the most heartening things about the whole experience, is that people did just go above and beyond. Strangers helping strangers, you know, people pushing themselves out of their own comfort zone so that they could provide comfort to others. And, you know, the volunteer groups, the churches, the community organisations, the schools, like the list is endless. You know, in addition to, of course, all of our professional first responders who, again, you know, they did more than what they would be expected to do. You know, so many of them sort of at times put aside their own personal safety to help someone else, which I know we don't encourage that, but that's just human, you know, that's human nature. You're going to help people when you see people in trouble. And they're just countless stories of absolutely incredibly heroic actions.
And going back to that sort of morning when you came in at 3 a.m. How was that drive for you?
Well, it was interesting. I mean, it was a short drive, but it was going through our CBD, and so the likes of passing Clive Square, where there was a lot of the branches off the trees had fallen across the road. So yeah, there was times when I was sort of thinking, oh, maybe I should have woken up my partner and made him bring me in his four-wheel drive rather than jumping in my council car. But thankfully, it was a short drive, and I, you know, got here very quickly.
And was that sort of the start of like, okay, something's not right?
Absolutely, yes. I think when I actually arrived here in the office, and then I actually started getting texts and Facebook messages from people out in the community who were in trouble, people that were on their roofs, and obviously relaying all the information that I was getting both to our team here so they could share it wider with the likes of the fire service and the police so they could see what was happening. But again, it was, you know, I was just sitting there thinking, wow, you know, what's happening out there? This is huge. This is something that we've never experienced before.
Because that must be quite daunting, getting messages from people who are still struggling out.
It was really hard, and also really hard knowing at this stage it was still dark. It was still, you know, raining very heavily, and, you know, knowing that the first responders out there were actually experiencing their own challenges to go and help these people. So I think it would be fair to say that during those early hours of the morning of the actual cyclone event, there were people that just, like me, I think, felt frustrated because we would have liked to be probably doing some things a lot faster than we could, but we did still need to ensure that, you know, we were keeping everybody safe. But I know that certainly going and trying to rescue those people that were in trouble or were on their roofs was absolutely the priority in those first few hours, as soon as people, you know, were able to get to them.
Did you ever think that something like this would happen, particularly to the scale that it did?
Absolutely not. And I reflect and remember we had a meeting with the Civil Defence team on the Monday, sort of late afternoon, early evening it was, where they sort of just gave us some suggestions, recommendations based on the modelling that they'd done from the, you know, weather forecast and what we were expecting. And there certainly had been no indication the gravity of the event we were about to experience at all. So we had been advised that each of the councils should set up their emergency ops team just to be on the safe side, and thank goodness we did, because it did mean that we were immediately able to activate once we realised how dangerous it was and how bad it was getting, and hit the ground running from there.
And how has the now 12 months been since the cyclone?
I think it's really been very different for so many different people, and because there's parts of our community obviously that have been absolutely devastated and are still very much recovering, who are grieving their lost ones loved ones that they've lost, who are still in the middle of rebuilding or going through the voluntary buyout process. And so those people, it's been a long 12 months and they're not at the end of their journey yet. Other parts of our community obviously have sort of, fully moved on, and I know they're still very sensitive to the needs of those who are not in a position to move on yet. So really it's about us supporting all of our community in the way that's most appropriate for them. And it's about us focusing on the rebuild of our infrastructure that was impacted, and just the region as a whole in terms of, all that roading infrastructure, finishing the silt removal, which is huge. And for us here in Napier in particular, ensuring that those lifelines, which we're not directly responsible for. So again, that's the challenge for us, because we can't fund it, we can't make the decisions around how to build resilience into the power network and how to build resilience into the telecommunications network. So we need to just work really hard on behalf of our community and advocate those organisations and central government to ensure those investments are made.
And because what lessons did you learn from this?
It's interesting, and we did do an internal review here at Napier City Council, and it was very, very useful. We got some recommendations out of that review about lessons learnt in terms of one of the key ones for me was around our internal resourcing to actually be able to step up and provide the response required for an event of this magnitude. And to be fair, I don't think that came as a huge surprise to us. We knew that we needed to build capacity in that space. In an unprecedented event like this, you need the feet, on the floor. You need people there to be able to be responsive and, just get stuck in for those initial few days in particular. So I think that's one that we're really focused on now, building that capacity, ensuring we've got the right level of funding to have the staff and have them trained and have them ready if we should ever find ourselves in this position again.
And as you mentioned, the 1 year anniversary will be tough for a lot of people. What's your message to them?
I think everyone just needs to listen to themselves, to be very conscious of how they're feeling, and obviously we all react differently when we're reflecting on things that have happened in the past. So it's really about having that self-care, and if you do need to take some time out, if you do need to go and spend some time with family, just sort of acknowledge what it is that you need 1 year on to make sure that you're coping with it as best you can. We've got our civic ceremony at the Sound Shell on Wednesday, which for us it was really, really important that it was for the whole community. And so we really have sort of the way that the day is planned is so that anybody that's in attendance will feel that they can participate. We're doing the stones that are getting put into a water bath, and really just going to take that time to have everybody come together and commemorate 1 year on.